Come on, do what you're supposed to. All right, well, I'm just gonna hide one more thing. That wasn't it. Hide something. Hide floating media control, there we go. All right, well, thank you everybody for coming and welcome to those that are home. I'd like to welcome our guest speakers today, Bob and Dana Fox, who I've known now for many years and have had the privilege of spending some time up at Lake and Bagog with them and at many other adventures around New England. And we're all members of the Nuttall Ornithological Club and the Brookline Bird Club also. So without any further ado, I go ahead and introduce Bob and Dana Fox.
Thank you so much, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. It was a few years ago. In fact, Ernie and I were trying to recall how many years ago it was that we were here, but it's wonderful to be back and it's wonderful to see how well you maintain this building and the wonderful use that it gets here in this community. Tonight, we're going to focus on woodpeckers. For a while, Bob and I were giving talks on places that we traveled. And since we haven't been traveling as much recently out of the country, we've begun to focus on presenting a evening's entertainment based upon a family of birds. And so this tonight is our woodpecker one. We have others on loons, hummingbirds, crows. We're just doing a new one on hornbills, which are Asian and African. But anyway, this has become a great joy for Bob and I to do. And as you see here, there are many different shapes and types of woodpeckers that there are in the world. Tonight, we're going to share with you what is a woodpecker, the evolution of the woodpeckers, their biology, woodpeckers today, and a few of them that we have gotten to enjoy. What is a woodpecker? It obviously is a bird that lives in the woods and they're nearly worldwide. And they have that ability to chisel out their nest cavities, dig for food. They have large heads, long tongues. They love insects and ants. And they're an ancient family and a large one. And they do not have songs, just calls. So here is a wonderful depiction of the orders of birds. You'll see down on the bottom level, the family, the order of birds that is depicted down here on the bottom. Let me get my little thing. Down here are the ostriches. So those are the most primitive. So you go from the most primitive up to songbirds, which are the most developed and most recently developed. And you can see that the family that woodpeckers are in, the Piciformes, is really quite a bit up on the avian tree of life there. And there are 9 families in the order of Piciformes. You can see them listed over on the left there. We have jacamas, toucans, bobits, and we have honey guides, the woodpeckers, puffbirds, jacamas. So it's a very diverse group of birds, many of which are not residents here in Athol or the US, but some of them you may have seen many of the members of this family down in South America. And you can see over here on the right where woodpeckers are again in amongst the group of families that are depicted there. But then there are 4 genera within that family. And there are traditional woodpeckers that are the most recently evolved. You have 2 piculets and you have a wryneck. The evolution of woodpeckers, Bob is going to share with you information about, And we do this song and dance, so we'll be up and down a bit during the evening there.
Well, I too, I'm glad to be here and have a good audience like this. And I hope you get some new ideas, because what we're trying to do, as Dana said, is to take a family and really go into the family, not just learn to identify the birds, but learn about the birds. So anyway, the way the evolution of, and some people like to read and some people like to listen. So we'll do the same thing, sort of quoting off this thing. Now, the first thing was that the Woodpecker family, that's the one we're really talking about, separated from its nearest relative, the honey guides, which is pictured up here in the corner in the order of performing about 50 million years ago, a long time ago. Now, a guy over in England, Charles Sibley, used DNA to establish that the woodpeckers evolved 15 to 53 million years ago. About 30 years ago, the Sibley's in Monroe over in England have found sort of a tag that they can look and go back in history, and it's very good for dating. It used to be you have to have a fossil and a dead bird. This way you can do it right from any bird you can get. Anyway, so he established over in Europe, over on the old world, he and Sibley said 50 to 53 million years ago was when woodpeckers established. But on this side, down in Arizona and New Mexico, there's a lot of fossilized trees. I mean, they look like trees, but they're just sort of walls of trees. There's holes in them. Most people are claiming that those were made by woodpeckers. Maybe you can, I have some thoughts about that, but let's assume that's what they say. So let's assume they're right. But those trees are dated at 49 to 50 million years ago. So it's the same kind of date then. Now, coming a little more recently, Ernst Mayr over in Germany found a fossil. You get very few fossils of things like woodpeckers. They don't lend themselves to being fossilized. Anyway, but he found one, and it was dated as a fossil at about 25 million years ago. And then there's something I have not seen, but I'd love to, on the little island out in the Caribbean, Hispaniola. They have a lump of amber, and in it is a fossil that can be dated to 24 million years ago. So both 50 and the 25 million years ago, warblers were on both sides. Now, we get down to what is going to go on. Wrynecks is another kind of a bird, another part of the Piculets, and they evolved about 15 million years ago. And we're going to show you a picture of those. So that's the first number of birds that started and that we still have around. So 15 million years ago, we have that. Okay, and you took off my notes.
No.
And so the thing, and all these birds you see are pretty good thing. So the wrynecks are still around. They're in Europe mainly, and so we don't happen to see them. Now the Piculets are much more recent, about 9 million years ago, and the main group of them are in South America. They're little round jobbies, about that size. And there's some African Piculets. So we go from 15 to 9. And then the third thing that's going to come up is what we call the real woodpeckers. And so the real woodpeckers are the ones that we know. That's what we would be talking about for the rest of the evening here. And so,
Sorry. We'll get this. There it is. Okay, there you are.
okay,
Bob.
so Now, some of these birds, you probably know if you've been doing much birding around. The 7 million years ago, the real woodpeckers, the one we call woodpeckers, came into being. Now, you know some of them. There's a lot of them scattered around the world, even in the U.S. But I know that some that are going to be here. So what we're going to do is talk about some of the birds here. They're divided up into what we call the ladderbacks because they got lines in the back. And you know red-headed woodpeckers. You probably have red-bellied chaffitas. Dana will be talking about the acorn woodpecker. So you're going to have that 6 done. The next group is sapsuckers. We don't know much about them, and well, I've got some new research as to how they became to be, and so I'm going to talk about that a little later on. The third group down is where the downy and hairy woodpeckers, which you know, and maybe red cockaded, are the ones there. Now the next group, American three-toed and blackbacks, which is like it, you do not know, and I'll tell you why. They are northern. They coming into New England, just right at the Vermont, New Hampshire top. Probably the river would be a better way to do it. But from there north, woodpeckers are on deciduous trees. These are on evergreen trees. But the area from really Canada all the way around the world is about 1,000 miles worth of evergreen trees, and that's where the three-toed woodpeckers live. So it's a major bird in the world, but not for us particularly. Flickers you do know about, and we're going to talk about those. And then the ones that we really like to talk about are what we call the large black woodpeckers. There's 2 groups of them. The pileated woodpecker, you probably know because it's around here. But the other group includes the ivory-billed and the imperial, some of the biggest woodpeckers we've ever had.
Okay.
Now, as you can see up here, the woodpeckers I've just been talking about, 235 in the world. That's a lot of birds. 24 species in the U.S., that's pretty good. I covered them just a minute ago. And Dana's had 161. I have had 175, but we're all doing that. Now you can see, if you want to see what those big woodpeckers look like, the bottom picture there, you can see it has a white bill and red on the head. So you get some ideas of what the big ones are going to be looking like.
Now I'm going to spend some time with you on the biology of these woodpeckers. They have specialized tongues, skulls, feet, and tails. Here is their tongue. The tongue is long. It's 1.5 times from the back of the head to the bill tip. There are glands at the end that are sticky, enabling them to have insects stick to the tongue. And also there are barbs that are pointed backwards to hold the prey in place. And then they have strong muscles that are controlling that bill. This is a wonderful picture. Look at that tongue. This is a pileated woodpecker from Brentwood, New Hampshire, that a friend captured a picture of there. And that tongue is protruding into that bark and trying to grab our grub. We'll see some more of this action there, but that was neat. Why don't they get a concussion? I mean, if you and I banged our head against a tree the way in which they do, think of it, you would have a concussion. There's a wonderful Professor Lorna Gibson, she's actually just retired from MIT, and a materials science professor, and she calculated what the human brain and the relationship to the woodpecker brain. And she said that because the woodpecker's brain is so much smaller, it doesn't have the same impact that our brains would if we were doing it. Also, the duration of the impact is 4 times lower than it would be if we were doing it. And the orientation of their brain, it's at the back of the head, whereas ours is at the front of the head. So that orientation of where their brain is protecting them from getting a concussion. Now, there have been some researchers that have been looking at where it is in the brain, in the skull shot size, and they came to that conclusion that the size of the woodpecker's brain is the reason why it doesn't cause concussion. Birds would have to hit a tree at twice the speed, or 4 times, the wood would have to be 4 times as stiff to get a concussion. So fortunately for the woodpeckers, they're lucky. Now here is a get this to go. Good. Watch the impact of when the woodpecker's head is hitting that tree. Look at how it reverberates. That the. Would you like to come in and sit down?
Oh, I am. Yes, I am. I just.
Sure. Good. There. But look at that. Look at each time each of these woodpeckers hits their head, the ripple effect there. So it again is compensating for that hitting its head on the side of a tree. This is a black woodpecker from Europe.
Yeah.
But isn't it, and you just don't see that. Obviously, it's been slowed down so that you can get to see that impact. Great. Now, they have specialized feet, as you know, that are designed to hold the bird along a tree trunk. And you see with 2 feet, 2 toes forward and 2 toes back in the left-hand illustration, that gives them greater ability to hold themselves against that tree trunk. But there are, as Bob mentioned, a 3-toed woodpecker. The blackback and the American 3-toed have only 3 toes as opposed to the 4. And notice the configuration of their foot. But they still are able to hold themselves against a tree, but in some close-ups and slow motion videos, it looks as though they may be using their wings to hold them in place against the tree trunk as well. And then they have specialized tails. Look at the red-bellied woodpecker in the lower left illustration. See the pointed tail feathers. See how pointed they are, which again allows them to prop that tongue against the tree trunk, hold themselves in place. And because there are stiff central barbs on those feathers, that between the pointed feather and the strong barbs, that enables them to prop themselves and hold themselves against the tree tongue. Now, drumming. You've been hearing them. I know it's been so much fun. I must have 3 pair of downy woodpeckers. You know, I've fed them all winter. I've been waiting for them to perform. And they are just absolutely amazing right now. Let's see if we can get this to go.
This is bird note. Like a jazz player beating out a drum roll, a woodpecker uses its bill to rap out a brisk series of notes. Early spring resounds with the percussive hammering of woodpeckers. Their rhythmic drumming works like many birds' songs. It broadcasts to other woodpeckers over a long distance a clear assertion of territorial and mating rights. We also hear woodpeckers knocking on wood when they're carving holes in trees to create nest cavities or extract insect prey. But these whacks are more methodical. Woodpeckers offer a fascinating cast of drummers. A hefty pileated woodpecker lets go a resounding tattoo against a hollow trunk. A yellow-bellied sapsucker seems to be signaling in Morse code as it snaps its bill against a stub of dead branch. And the little downy woodpecker's drum roll seems rather modest, rather short, and not too fast. For any woodpecker, it's all about proclaiming a sound signal as far and as loud as possible. And as it searches for the most resonant drum, it might just find that your metal rain gutter makes the best music. For Bird Note, I'm Michael Stein.
I just love that video, audio. But remember that this is like the songbird's song, the drumming. They are just demonstrating territorial superiority. This is where I live. And they've found also that the portion of the brain where the songbird's song emanates from is where this drumming capability is in woodpeckers. The song is only in songbirds, the highest evolution there of families on that chart that I showed you. But the woodpecker sort of replaces a song with drumming. So it just
This is Bird Note.
oops, no. Okay. So, and I said that they don't have songs, they're not songbirds. They do have calls, and these are not learned as songs are, but they are signals to various members of their species or other species, and they can be rattle or trill-like, and the larger ones usually have two distinct calls, and nestling woodpeckers give several types of calls. I can remember being up in the Connecticut lakes in northern New Hampshire, and we were in this cutout area where there had been logging, and you would be surprised at how loud those young were. There was no, and it was a blackback woodpecker, there was no doubt where the nest was. Those young were so noisy there. So calls and young songs, or I'm sorry, young calls are really apparent there. Tonight, we're going to share with you some stories about woodpeckers that we've known and that we enjoy. And you can see the list of ones here on the left. We're going to start with the acorn woodpecker. And you can enjoy this. No.
Yeah, there you go.
This is from Cornell.
One of the most interesting birds that I've ever photographed is the acorn woodpecker. And I found a population of woodpeckers in a suburban park in Southern California. I noticed this tree with thousands and thousands of holes in it, each of which had got an acorn stuffed into it. Acorn woodpeckers, I think, are among the busiest birds. And what this tree is called is a granary tree. This is where the group of acorn woodpeckers that lives together, this is where they store their winter food supply. It's a tree that's been used over the generations. Multi-generations of these woodpeckers have been using the same tree, adding to the number of holes over the years. So they don't drill them all at once. Each winter they drill a few more and add some more acorns to them. No other woodpeckers in North America will have this special method of storing in specifically drilled holes. So that makes acorn woodpeckers pretty special in the bird world. Many people describe acorn woodpeckers as having a flower-like look. They're very colorful woodpeckers. They've got glossy blue-black back. They've got red and pale yellow and black markings around their heads and faces. And their eyes are in fact a kind of a pale whitish color. They really stand out. And you can tell the males from the females by the fact that the females have a little band of black between the red and the pale yellow. And in the males, the red and yellow are next to each other. So when you find one acorn woodpecker, you're most likely going to find a group of them because they're highly social birds. They live in social groups year round, up to a dozen individuals in there. And one of the commonest sounds you like to hear when a group gets together is this wacka wacka call. And often they're also displaying at the same time. They're giving this dramatic and very, very wonderful wing spread display. So you'll get one bird landing on the granary tree, then others will join it, and they'll be displaying and calling away. There's nothing more fun than heading out to some park and hang out and wait for some acorn woodpeckers to show up at their tree. You're bound to be entertained. It's one of the funnest things I like to do. I really like to go and watch them and photograph them.
Oops. It's not cooperating here. You're done. Mr. Acorn, you're done. I think I've also taken it off. No. All right.
Get out of YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, get out of YouTube here. Does anyone got a brilliant idea?
Let me see if I can. Yeah, just trying to see what. Yeah, I want to get rid of that. Yeah. They were. Is this your talk here?
Yeah. That's,
Okay.
that's.
Okay, we just well. Well, I want to get off of that.
Okay, now quickly see if we can go forward to the next. There we go. All right.
Perfect.
Now, here we go. Bob is going to talk to you about the flicker. For the first time in 30 years, we had a pair of flickers in our yard in North Andover all through the winter.
Before I get into this, I think you're beginning to catch on to how we get information for you. Now, you may say, why don't we look it up in a book? You've got a bird book and you could look up something like a flicker or anything of that sort. The book was probably published 20 years ago. The author took 10 years to write the book. So what's in that book is 30 years old. Data says you've got to get the latest information. That's why we're getting quotes from various things. You read a lot of literature and get a very few tidbits of information, but sometimes you get some interesting ones. In the case of the flicker, it breeds, as you probably know, in Canada and northern U.S., but it has to get ants. It has to be able to get ants. 75% of its food is ants. If you don't get ants in the winter, and so the whole flicker engine slides down. So it's resting on the southern border. It's about halfway up. It was such a warm and odd winter this year. Probably that's why we had a couple of flickers. But we had them because we had a feeder. The feeder is almost like moving the ants up to the birds. But anyway, now because of deforestation, you are losing some flickers, but you're not losing very many. However, the two we had wished that we didn't have. And this goes back to 1995. It's a story that I had picked up, that two individuals, probably male and female, you know how they come and tap on your side of your house sometimes, that sort of thing. Well, they went down to the Space Center in Cape Kennedy, and they started working on the installation. They had 200 holes in the installation before they finally realized flickers were the problem that they were getting. I don't know what happened to those two flickers, but I'm sure they got kicked out of the Cape. But nonetheless, it cost $1 million to just get that straightened out.
Okay. Now Bob and I are going to go back and forth with these large black woodpeckers.
Could I go back one? Now, there are these big black ones. The biggest woodpeckers that we've ever known are these two, that you look at them, two on the left, and the third one on the right, which you say is a good-sized woodpecker, and it is. It's a pileated. The pileated is in one group of black woodpeckers, and the two on the left are, you can see how much bigger they are. The imperial is a huge bird and got a lot of white on the end of the wings. That's one way you can tell it. And some of them have white coming down that's on their necks and along their backs. So that is that. I would not tell you where I created that picture, but I was in a museum once. Now, James Audubon was an artist as well as a bird watcher and a lot of other things. And he painted this picture of an image of what an ivory bill should look like. You have the male with a red headpiece, and the others are females. And you can see the one on the right is a female. It's got a piece of bark that he pulled off that tree and was getting a bug that was underneath it. And you can see it's got white lines down the neck. And so that's what you're looking at. And he did a nice job at putting that picture together. It's a classic picture. Now, we're going to talk about some of the places that the ivory bill has turned up. This is the Swanee River, which is in Florida. This is sort of east of, on the east area. But the person on the left is William Brewster. And if you want to know something about William Brewster, talk to Dana. She's really has written the book on Brewster, who has done a lot of things, but he was a major collector of birds. And this probably went into his collection, and from there went into the Harvard Museum one point. But the Swanee River in Florida. Now, Florida is near the area of Cuba. And what happened when back in the 16th, 17th century, the birds were throughout Florida and over to Cuba, and then they go in the other direction. And so we're going to talk about how far west they go. They sort of go partway around the Gulf of Mexico. Now, here's some other pictures. Pictures are a dime a dozen, I thought. The only photographs that have ever been taken with all the information that we know about ivory bills were these things. Jim Tanner came down, and at the Singer track, which is over in Louisiana, you see we've moved west now. In the Singer track, you had the camera, and he finally got pictures of them. These are about the only photographs you ever will see of them. You can see the left-hand one, it's got a little white line down the neck and a little tuft on the head, and obviously has a white bill. And the one on the right, the male, see the kind of a hole. You know, woodpeckers live in holes in trees. You may say, don't all birds? No, if you start thinking about it, there's only 4 families of birds that actually live or make nests in trees. All the rest of them in the world are not doing that. But anyway. Now,
When we were in Cuba in 2000 and 2001, And we were down in the Zapata Swamp at the one place at that point where you could stay. And they had this mat for sale. I rolled it up, prayed, and somehow I got back into the States with it. And it just is a wonderful thing that we keep up in our summer camp in New Hampshire, and we enjoy it there.
As far as we know, this is the only picture that's ever been made of the
No,
race
no.
that is in Cuba. And that is a race as, or a subspecies, you might call it, of the ones that are around the Gulf of Mexico.
Just do next. Pardon me?
Yeah, just click next.
Next, yep. There we go.
Okay, now, I rebuild, I've got a story about an I rebuild, and this is my own doing, so this, I don't have to look in the book to find my information or anything of that sort. In the early 50s, in this case, 1952, I was in the Air Force, and I was working in San Antonio, Texas. A regular sort of office job, fancier than that, but I lived that kind of a thing. And I was a lister of birds. I had been listing them up here for years in mass. When I got down there, I thought it was a good idea to start listing them there. So what I did is I went down to where birds gathered. Connie Hager run a birders bed and breakfast area, and that's where all the bird watchers assembled. So I went down there very early. One day I went down, and about a mile before I got to Connie's house, there were along the side of the road, there was a lot of short grass, dry short grass, and a little brush. And there was a bird about this size, a shorebird about this size, standing probably 100 miles from the Gulf of Mexico. And it was a curlew. If you know, there are several kinds of curlews. And anyway, the curlew, if we followed it, was going north. It would go up the Mississippi River. It would get to Hudson Bay. It would go up almost to the Arctic, and that's where it would nest. Hence the name Eskimo curlew. And that's the name of the bird. And everyone that I saw down there wanted to see it. So I would take them out in groups and drive out and show them the birds. And it went on and on. All Saturday I was taking groups out because they started calling on their phones. They were coming from 100 miles away and so forth. And then the next day on Sunday, they still came, but now they were coming from 200 or 300 miles. They'd call, is the bird still there? I'm getting in my car and coming right down, this sort of thing. And I was really getting tired of chasing out, but I went out because I didn't want anyone to go on their own and flush the bird. Once you flush it, that bird would start up to head to Canada, and that would be the end of it. So I always took them out. I would get I'm tired of doing the thing. Anyway, I finally said to Connie, no more. And she said, well, there's one group coming down from Houston. So there's 5 of them. They're some of the leaders of the Houston Bird Club. They're fun birders. They're good people, and they're good customers of bird too. Will you just wait and take them out? Make that the last trip, which I did. And they appreciated it. And like everyone else said, if we ever get a good bird, we'll give you a call and we'll have you over and show you the bird. We thank you for showing us. And the people from Houston said the same thing. However, they, about 2 or 3 weeks later, gave me a call and said, couldn't we, would you like to come over? We're going to run our usual census this coming Saturday. And I said, oh, sure. If they were inviting me, they had something that would be interesting, I'm sure of that. So they said, well, there's no great problem. We have telescopes and this sort of thing. Just bring your field glasses, and there may be some puddles around. So just have some shoes that you can walk through puddles and come over. And the way we want to do it is have you come over when you get out of work on Friday. So it took me 4 hours to get over to Houston. from San Antonio. When I did that, we got there, and they said, well, there's a couple of details that we ought to make sure you know. You cannot take a camera. You cannot have even try to make a map of where you're going. And for 10 years or longer, if you want to do it, you can tell no one about it. Don't mention it. Deny you have any knowledge of what this bird is all about. So I said, well, why not? What have I got to lose? Anyway, so anyway, we went over to, we got there about 8. I got there about 8, and 4 in the morning, they woke me up, got me in a car, and off we went. It was still dark. And we went by good roads in Houston, and then the road started getting poorer. We drove for maybe half, 3/4 of an hour. About the time we were stopping, the sun had come up, the birds were singing around. It was a great spring day. It was better than the weather has been around here for that. And what we had is a line of brush. We were lined up, and as far as you could see in each area, there was brush about 8 feet high and thick, almost like a huge hedge. But beyond that, there was some old trees. Some of them were dead or dying and so forth. But they were big trees, and that's where we were going to go. So they said, we'll go through this thing and line up on the other side. And one of the fellows was on my left, then I was number 2. The leader was number 3, and the other 3 were to the right of her. And so we started off. And finally, after about, maybe 15 minutes walking, suddenly the leader did that. Everyone stopped. We looked, we listened, absolutely had no idea what it was. And after we sort of floundered around, we moved on a little further. And in about another 10 minutes or so, she stopped again and then went this way. And I got the idea we should hear something. So I listened hard. And what I heard was an odd thing. It was a double tap. It was like this. A hard tap with an echo right after it that would be softer. Tap, 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 tap. And that was the sign of the bird calling. And so we all were happy about that. We all sort of got in a group, and they said, don't step on a dead tree, dead branch, because if you break it, it'll make a snap and the bird is going to fly. So we sort of carefully worked ourselves up, and we got probably twice as far as from here to the wall over there, up and looked up, and there was a bird sitting like the picture on the right, an all-black bird with an odd sort of a headpiece, white line down their neck, and flicking bark off the tree and not eating the bark. What they were doing is getting the grubs that were underneath. They feed on grubs and this sort of thing, and that's what they were eating. So that worked along fine. The idea worked fairly well, but somehow or other we did what we didn't want them to do. We sort of nudged ourselves forward, got a scope on it. We all had good looks. And then someone in moving around stepped, thank goodness it wasn't me, stepped on a twig and broke it. Crack, it went. The bird took off, but instead of flying away, it flew right in front of us. It was about 50 feet in front of us, flying right along. And it was doing something I've never seen woodpeckers do. When you think of a woodpecker, you think of a bird that flaps and it goes up and then sails down. It's got an undulated flight, sort of like this. This as it goes along. This bird did not. It flew like a goose would fly, perfectly flat as they go along. Just flap, flap, flap. And of course, the white on the wings, when they fly, the whole end of the wing is white, and it just is a flashing white. And it went by us and off, and sort of off into the distance through the trees, which I thought was that. So I was going to turn around and come and head back, but the idea was to maybe go and take a look and see where it went. After all, it was only about 10 in the morning. So I was starting back, but they said, no, let's go inside and go down where it did. And we walked for an hour or so. And so when we got down there, we turned around, and there was one probably 200 feet ahead of us. And it looked like, just like the one on the left, had that red pilot. It was a male, and it was a beautiful thing sitting there in the morning. We didn't want to scare that, so we didn't get any closer to it. But I had lots of questions to ask and find out. And so coming back, I asked them. One of them is, why was this hole near where the female was this morning? And it was big enough so you could take a football, just stick it down in it. It's a big hole like this. And they said, well, it goes down about 6 feet. If you stood at the bottom, you'd be out of sight. And they made that. Males and the females get together in the early spring and dig the big hole, which they're going to have for their nest. It goes down about 5 feet, and then it has a chamber, which is even bigger down under there. That's where they raise their birds. And so what was going on there, they would raise the thing, but something different happened with the ivory bills. She would lay the eggs in the nest, and then she took off. The male has to raise the birds, teach them to fly, and goes on from there. There's a lot of, they never use the same hole twice. So in a woods like that, I've learned of a lot of other things like that. A couple of other things, though, they said, I said, well, why don't you let people know? They said, you can imagine what would happen. There haven't been many specimens collected of that. Every museum would want another specimen. They also would like to get pictures and get closer and closer to that would scare the bird away. And then there would be the bird watchers. We would estimate 10,000 would be here within a week if we ever let them know they were here. So we have kept this as a secret, and that's why we don't want you to let anyone else know anything more about it.
Well, he didn't for quite a while, but fortunately, he is telling his story, and it is something, you know, dramatic to see two extinct birds. One as a result of the other is quite a wonderful story there. Now that other smaller black woodpecker is the one that we know about here, and you can see two examples. Beautiful. There's just such wonderful birds. This was taken up in Tuftonboro, New Hampshire, where we spend the summer, and you can see this big woodpecker's down on the ground. And then he gets up in along the edge of that big tree stump because he's looking for grubs. Here is a video that we will show you actually how he does this. Notice he works with his bill, and you can see him suddenly grabbing white bits. See how he cuts off big chunks of wood and then gets there. And look at how quickly he can manipulate that wood. And he's down quite a distance. See, he's eating the grubs here now. Here he goes. Got a nice big grub there. Oh, a good one. How powerful he is to be able to strip that bark and get down there to that lower level. And you can see his feet, the 2 feet forward. See if I can move him. I'm not gonna be able to move him. All right. This amount of work is just for these few minutes. Imagine what he's like all day long, goodness.
Dana, was that call, was that twirly little sound we heard coming from him?
No,
Okay.
no.
It's I think that button on the bottom.
Actually, good. There, okay.
So to keep it-
Here, now, this,
Maybe I can hide this again too.
yeah. Good. Look at this pileated woodpecker and look at what's in his mouth. See the blue arrow? Look at the length of that grub.
Oh,
We think that it's a Prionis beetle grub, the longhorn beetle. And this is the way the beetle looks when it's an adult. But the length of that grub that was taken probably from that tree trunk that we saw earlier in the picture there of the pileated woodpecker, but just absolutely astounded me that it was so amazing.
He doesn't choke on it.
Right. All right, Dave,
you go, no?
she's not moving down,
What's not?
right?
I don't know why.
I have to review this chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, and you know that the pileated woodpecker has those characteristic shapes. You've probably seen trees like this around here where they have that oval shape. Two different trees, one from the Lake and Bagog, Dixville Notch area, and one from Melvin Village. But again, so characteristic of pileated woodpeckers. Now, this is a story that I love. William Brewster, as Bob said a short while ago, I've spent quite a bit of time learning about. And he was born in 1851, and he went up to Lake and Bagog in 1871 for the first time, and then went up there until 1909 when he decided there were just too many people, boats, cars. He wanted a primitive place. And but during that time, Lake and Bagog, as you may know, is a long, narrow lake, 10 miles long. And he had a cabin up in the northeast corner of the lake. And he got to it by starting out at the southern end, 10 miles to the south. And there were ferries at that time on the lake. And he took the ferry to his dock, floating dock, and would get out. And he loved being up there in September. Well, he found this tree on the right and he took a picture of that tree. But I remembered I had seen, if you see the picture of the gentleman in the top right there, on the right of the furthest right gentleman, you can see that tree. See it? And I've clipped that portion out of that picture, and here it is here on the left on this. So I had seen this picture of this gentleman earlier, and then we not all paid to have Brewster's pictures scanned, and I'm going through the pictures and I said, oh my God, that's the same tree. And then I came across a clipping, which is quoted here. And basically what happened was William Brewster saw this tree. He just was fascinated by these holes. He had it sawed down, floated down the lake, 10 miles down that lake, took it out of the water, stored it in a shed for a year, then got it somehow from Upton, Maine, which is on the New Hampshire border, over to Portland, put it on a train, took it to Boston, and had it moved into his museum, which he built in the back of his house at 145 Brattle Street. So and he tells the story of this tree and moving it and getting it into his museum to the Cambridge Tribune. I believe it's 1913. And so it was just fascinating, having seen the picture of the gentleman with the tree and then finding the tree in the collection of pictures and then finding the clipping. But isn't that quite a story of how the pileated woodpecker tree got moved from Lake and Bagog to Cambridge, Mass. Now, the next big woodpecker, Bob's going to come back, and guess what? This is an imperial woodpecker from Mexico.
This is about the biggest, we're gonna do some advancing here. This is the way, this is just a drawing of the thing. You see, it looks like the other one, but you can see the female down below has a thing that curls forward, and this is just plain bigger. I will tell you, very much bigger. Anyway.
Oops.
Okay. Now I was birding every weekend. I was really a bird nut. I was birding every weekend, and I eventually caught up with some people from a college, and the head of the college that was working on birds had all the grad students writing articles and life stories about the various birds of Mexico, and they would go down there and study the birds and come back and forth and do that sort of thing. But to make the story full, they wanted to know what birds come down from the United States in the winter. Now, the birds that they're studying are about 100 miles in. I live in San Antonio. In an hour, I'm at the Mexican border, and then I can go on for better than 100 miles before I get to the mountains. So when I would spend a couple of days down there, I would work through there, especially in the cold part of the thing. The professor wanted to have me give him all the information I could and get more about the birds of winter that was down there on the lowlands. And another guy was writing a book on the birds of Mexico, sort of like what Peterson did, and had a series of that. So they both wanted something from me, and I finally said, I'd like to really go and see those birds if I ever could do so. And they said, the guy said, oh, come down with us. We're going to do a Christmas census down there. And I said, oh no, I'm going home, unfortunately, this year. That isn't going to work. But could you, if I took a week off in May or something like that, could you draw a map and show me where to go to really do the slope, the east slope of the mountains? They're tall. They're about 800, 9,000 feet up, and you have to be sure that where you stay, you can eat the food. Most of the people that go, they get sick on Mexican curse, and they don't like it at all. So anyway, so he did that, and he gave me a map of where to go and what I would see. And so in 1953, I did eastern Mexico. If you want to know the birds I got in less than a week, I had 241 species just on the side. So that was such a good idea that a couple of my friends that weren't in Mexico said if one was in California and doing the West Coast, Bob, and two others were working on the idea of seeing if they could get more birds or something that sort. So anyway, they said, we'll pay for a trip if you and Bob will lead the trip. And so in 1954, I did the Mexican trip, and Bob was one of the three that did the west coast of that. Now, it's hot in the summer anywhere here and everything. But if you get down to Mexico in the thing, the humidity and the heat is almost unbearable as you're coming up. And we were coming up, working on the birds and sweating and all of that, so staying in good places. And anyway, when we got to about 8,000 or 9,000 feet, that's the height of where Mexico City is. And that's the top of the ridge of the mountains there. The Sierra Madre Occidental is what they're known. They run from the Arizona border all the way down to well out of Mexico and down into Central America. Anyway, we were driving up, and when we got up and got out to the top of this ridge, there were big pine trees and big oak trees. I mean, it was like being up in maybe southern New Hampshire, that sort, with huge trees, beautiful, beautiful countryside. And it was cool. And so we pulled off and decided to we had a little, it wasn't a driveway, but it was sort of a ditchy area that we just pulled into that thing. There was no traffic on the road. We never saw another car. And we got out. And Bob was on the passenger side and got out. And by the time we all got out, he said, you know, I heard an odd sound. I think it's a woodpecker, but they did an odd thing. It made a, and I said, I didn't say anything, but I thought, my God, that here we are back to the Ivoryville woodpecker sound. And so I said, well, let's work this very carefully and see what we can get. So anyway, we worked around the tree. It was a big dead tree, and it was on the far side of it, about chest high. So we sort of walked around this way and see if we could get a look at the tree. And it got scared, but not badly, but it got pushed out a little bit from our tree. And it flew with it. We could almost touch it as it flew by. And the right side of our car was where wood people had cut down a tree, and so there was a flat surface where it was cut, and it was all sticky with sap and a lot of bugs in it, and it settled down and started eating the bugs. Well, while they were looking at this, I decided to look down the thing, and further down the sort of away from us, I saw a female, and then I saw another male down the thing. So I had at least three Imperials looking and working on trees down there. Now, that was okay. This, it happened a lot faster than I can talk about it. But then I began to recognize that this little project thing that we pulled off on was a dirt road that went down to a little white house. And out of the little white house came a big man carrying a rifle. And he was not happy that we had stopped there. And so he came up with a rifle walking fast. As soon as we saw that, pop, back into the car as fast as we could. And I got the engine started and just started to move it when he came up and banged on the hood and pointed his rifle and started to give us a talk and this sort of thing. But we didn't do anything like that. We pulled out, and I thought that was a bad sign, and get out as fast as we can. And but when he pulled away, he had a necklace on, and he had the skulls of 5 Imperials hooked on the thing. Later on, when we never like I was doing none of my people knew I had seen the Ivoryville. And so I told them the dangers of doing that. You will get a bad reputation. They won't believe you. And people that had released stories just were put down as stupid murders. And so I said, let's treat the Imperial this way and not tell anyone about it. But I later learned from reading and talking with people about how it used to be. I didn't say we had just seen it, but they said the loggers that are the death on all these big trees, they like to cut them down, and the last thing they need to do is have holes in their trees from woodpeckers. And so they would offer bounties for hitting them. They would set out hunting parties to get rid of them, and they would just put out poison on the surfaces where they would be eating them and try to get rid of them. But the last thing that I want to have on this thing, to get you into the mood of doing this thing, is the fact that no one has had a picture, took a picture of the thing.
Took a picture of the Imperial.
Along the thing, the Imperial was never had anything done of it. And even the government was sitting down to see if there's any Imperials left. They had hunters looking for them, not to shoot them, but just to identify them. No sign at all. But a dentist from Massachusetts, someplace in the United States, came down. He retired, and he said he had a camera and a telephoto lens, and he was going to go down and take a picture of an Imperial. And well, no one has ever seen a picture.
Okay.
But someone from Cornell Lab decided that if he said he had taken a picture of an Imperial and no one else had ever done anything like that, he hunted the person up, sent it to
And here it is.
and
Here's
this
the
is
footage.
picture. Look at it. You are seeing the only picture of an Imperial woodpecker that's ever been made. You're seeing it right here this afternoon. You don't see it well, but you can see how big it is.
Okay, we've got the same problem, Dave. How did you get out of it?
It's temperamental.
Temperamental, right?
Well, I don't know what I did the last time. I just kept hitting things.
Right.
Let's go that way.
Oh, here we go, okay?
Is that the next one?
No, right, now. We're now gonna talk about sapsuckers, and this is the only woodpecker to migrate south of their breeding range. And they all eat the same food, this insects that are captured in the tree sap. The holes are lined up around the tree, and they nest in these deciduous forests. And Bob will tell you that during the Ice Age, which lasted 2 million years, the Ice Age came down and back and was over here and there. And basically, certain populations got isolated.
Well, now you could.
Okay. All right, quickly.
There's one way that you can make a new bird. One of the ways that many new species have been done is a flock of birds, say a nest of them or something like this, slowly, almost imperceptibly, are changing a little bit as they go along. And if another group or some of the group wants to go down the street a bit and have another nest down there, and they can go back and forth, they keep the same pattern going. However, if something happens and the new group does not come back, we have the two groups and they're evolving in different directions. And that is how you can start it. So what you really need to do is have something to do with it. So I was reading some stuff about this and about 2 years ago now, about how they said how they were theorizing what happened about it.
Okay.
And so what they did is well, anyway, I'm saving this for the pictures. What they did is they said to have it, why not have it in when the Ice Age, when there was no ice there. If you think of the pattern of the bird that we have here, the yellow-bellied, which is the upper left picture there, that breeds from here right across the country. It gets even wider out towards California and Oregon, and it even goes up as far as Alaska. The Ice Age had ice covering that area off and on. So why not say that, that when things were going, the bird was staying that way. If the nest was separated and a piece of ice, part of the glacier was in between them, they would then be doing something separate. And that would account for it. Well, how can we match that up? Well, the yellow belly, which is the upper left picture, started. And if they separated, the one on the right, which is the red nape, see the throat and the bit more red on the head and more black, that was the result of the one that had pulled away. But that one didn't leave it at that. And the next time the ice age came down, because the glaciers came and went quite a few times, the red nape went and had the same problem. They got separated, and they turned out to produce, when they did this, the red-breasted that's down below. So you see the red gets better and better as it goes along. And so they say that was that. Now, one thing that makes the sapsuckers different from all of the woodpeckers, they don't, Dave's going to show some pictures about them, but during the area, the birds, the yellow-bellied, which was there, had created these things. But was it a subspecies of that? Well, subspecies don't go over and feed each other's birds. One bird doesn't feed, one species doesn't feed the young birds of the other one. This was happening all the time between yellow-breasted, yellow-bellied and red nape, or the red nape and the red-breasted down here. So this went on, and so they said this idea. Occasionally, they even found that they were actually interbreeding. They found birds that were a direct end thing. So they said, this is probably how they did it. And people haven't really bought into this idea, but it's the one that I think. But they do make holes. And we're now showing pictures now about there. We're going to show, Dana's going to show some pictures she's gotten from here in New England. And you'll see they're different from acorn newspapers, but not much.
So here we,
You know it's smart. Dinner on autopilot. Eat smart. Woodpecker.
all right. Dave,
So commercial comes in. This is not a yellow-breasted.
Are you sure?
Is this a commercial for YouTube?
I think it is, yeah, okay. Okay, let's go to the next one. Let's forget about this.
I think we're stuck to get on the machine.
All right. One more time, Dave. You gotta do your magic.
I don't know what I do.
I don't know.
I haven't done the same thing twice, so it's good.
Right.
Let me just see here.
There, okay, that's the next one. Do that, Dave.
I don't know what I
Okay,
did.
fine.
Again.
The yellow-bellied sapsucker, as you know, makes these holes. Have you anyone been to Monhegan? Down in the southern part of the island, there are some old apple trees. These are old apple trees. Look at the holes here. Generation upon generation of sapsuckers have come and have made holes in these trees. And I asked a friend last year to go out and take me some pictures of these trees. I didn't have any good ones. And lo and behold, he found a sapsucker on the tree in its lower bottom here. Now, these were taken on Plum Island. Look at the picture in the middle. These are birch trees on Plum Island. And this is yellow-bellied sapsucker. And you can see the holes that it made there to gather, to let the sap come out. Lo and behold, the next week, David Larson went back and the male and female black-throated blue warbler were feeding from these holes. And over on the left, the the yellow rump warbler and kinglet, golden crown kinglet is feeding on it. And there are stories, you probably have heard of hummingbirds that have been going to the sap and getting insects from the sap. So this is just miraculous the way this can happen. And we have a place right in front of our deck at our cabin in New Hampshire, and there's one that comes there, and there was a juvenile this year who came to the same place that his parents probably had been working on, and it's okay. But in conclusion, we hope that you've enjoyed exploring the world of woodpeckers and learned something and enjoyed the diversity and the beauty of these birds. We want to thank Dave for inviting us, to the club for hosting us, and to all of you for coming. So thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Yeah, let me just
Yes.
see if there's
surely.
anything online too, so.
Right, okay, yes.
Yeah, but you say that they don't migrate, I mean, the yellow bellies have migrated, I guess you're saying, down from Canada, they weren't southern birds, you're saying they come from the north? You're saying yellow bellies have migrated basically, or immigrated, shall we say, down from Canada, not from the south, is that what you're saying?
He was talking about evolution in one respect, okay, so how they evolved
Yeah.
into different species there.